Should generative AI, specifically large language models, in healthcare be regulated? Look, it is extremely important to understand from a healthcare perspective how your data is being used, how the generative AI models are going to be creating more data, and is it going to be safe or not? Let's find out. In today's presentation, we're going to mainly focus on this particular paper. This is written by Eric Topol. I don't know if you guys know, I'm a big fan of him. He wrote the book called Deep Medicine. If anyone have not read it, please do so. He writes a blog called Ground Truth, and honestly, his tweets are amazing. Make sure that you follow this person. He's an amazing cardiologist and has been giving a lot of thought in general about regulation, digital health, etc. One of the things that he wrote is imperative of. Like, it is so imperative that you have regulatory oversight. No doubt about it. And without any question, we're going to go through this whole paper that how large language models and generative AI specifically in healthcare. I mean, there are other areas as well that we need. For example, fintech would be one of other good examples as compared to copywriter. We're going to make sure that there is a significant regulatory oversight. Now, I'm building in a startup. As you know, we're going to be giving out more details as we go along. We're going to actually tell you exactly how we are going through the process of compliance in the future videos. So make sure you are subscribed to this channel and follow me specifically on LinkedIn, where I personally make sure that I post. So as we all know, there is rapid advancement in artificial intelligence. Like, it's going beyond comprehension. Honestly, it is so hard for me to even keep up that it's just ridiculous at this moment in time. So when we say that there is rapid advancement, it's honestly an understatement. There is so sophisticated level of large language models that are coming way after another, and specifically the arms race in artificial intelligence between the companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, etc. Microsoft has plethora of new foundation models that you can use. So the two big ones are, of course, GPT and Bard. GPT is from OpenAI, Microsoft, and Bard is from Google. One of the things that we have to understand that when you have direct, critical patient, caring, that is basically clinical at bedside, you really need massive amount of regulation and regulatory oversight. That does not mean just one-time regulation, but consistently have a process of regulatory oversight, as we already do for medications, for other devices, medical devices, etc. The regulation of GPT-4 and generative AI in medicine and healthcare without damaging their existing transformative potential. That is the balance we need to strike. It's so easy to say, okay, do the regulation. Well, the first problem is that is regulation going to kill innovation? And unfortunately, it does a lot of times. As a matter of fact, one of the stupidest, most horrific ever legislation was HIPAA. Does nothing. It is absolutely garbage, right? We all know that. It has no protection. It is not end-to-end encrypted. It is not giving right access at the right time. As a matter of fact, it is the hindrance of all innovation possible in healthcare. So we need to get the right side kind of regulation so that it doesn't destabilize the amount of innovation we seriously need, because the healthcare potential is huge, and unfortunately the cost is huge, and we really need to bring that down as much as possible so that cost that is going into administration, etc., can go back to clinical bedside money to be used for caring me and you at some point in time. Everyone's getting older, so therefore it's extremely important. So we have seen that large language models are being used extensively from legal, education, etc. And what we have seen that there are multiple implications of it, and he's going to basically go into all of these applications for large language models. So specifically for medical professionals, right? This is where we both come in. Most of my audiences at least come in. That for medical professionals, you can do clinical documentation, discharge summaries, clinical notes, pre-authorization, research papers, radiology interpretation, suggesting treatment options, designing treatment plans, diagnostic assistance, and medical triage. Now, if you look through this block, this is called CDSS, Clinical Decision Support Systems. That is one block that you're talking about. This is computer vision, spraying forward, and actually it's not just radiology, it is going to be pathology. How large language models come in is basically that they are able to take the computer. First of all, there are visual transformers as well. So there's a whole new technology in which the same transformer technology that we're using for large language models are going to be used for detecting, medical images as well, or any kind of image as well. So that's number one. And number two, even I am looking into how I can use the answers that are given through a computer vision model to be explained within the radiology report, and or as simple as that when there is a radiology report and if a patient wants to see, it can dilute it in a way that they can understand it. So that no intracranial pathology. What the fuck does that mean to a 9-year-old, to a 80-year-old, right? Doesn't. This consists of a normal exam, blah blah blah, and that could be summarized, detailed at a patient education level, and that in itself is very important that we can use for large language model. This, as you can see, is what we call documentation assistance. So these 3 models, and over here is basically what we consider back-end technologies. Again, these are not just insurance authorizations. We can also have automations of pharmacy dispensing, automation of checking if the pharmacy medications are interacting with each other. Again, this can be done manually, but if you do it through artificial intelligence, first of all, the cost overall of computer literally goes down, and more importantly, the accuracy goes up. And then and of course there's a whole area of research in itself, just not research papers. We are seeing that large language models, the baseline technology of transformers are going to be used in genetics and everything. For patients, there are multiple ways that they can use it. The first is symptom assessment, right? And this is one of the key things, right? Because symptoms assessment, and especially if you're actually getting data from your wearables in a consistent way, how your symptoms are changing. So for example, tremors, are they getting better or worse? What time of the day it gets worse? That is so important that symptom assessment can go in directly, and then we can adjust the medication appropriately. And honestly, artificial intelligence is needed because I can have charts and charts and charts of data that I cannot go through. It's impossible. I'm not going to be mental chatbots. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not so sure about it, because these things can actually be, again, we're going to talk about regulation, how medication adherence is extremely important. Artificial intelligence can not only be your AI buddy for your medication adherence, but therapeutic adherence, because there are different forms of therapeutics that come in. For example, vagus nerve stimulator for a migraine, right? So if you are actually having your heart rate up, etc., they can guide you to say, okay, do this particular therapeutics. Rehabilitaion guidance is extremely important. With the camera, you can see how much your knee is being moved. So orthopedics, and there are multiple startups that are looking into this to actually create ways in which patients can directly do home exercises, decreasing the time that they need to go to rehab, improving their performance, the overall ability to move, and then decreasing the overall time in terms of rehab, which is significant cost in terms for healthcare. So, and not to mention, we do not have enough freaking physical therapists, right? So therefore, there's definitely very important. Health risk prediction. I don't know, we used to say that retina eyes are the window to the soul. Believe it or not, retina is the soul to your overall chronological age. You can not only predict sex, actually sexual preference, believe it or not, age, and so many risk factors, specifically the ones that have been done beautifully are cardiovascular risk factors. So you're going to see a lot of that available for patients as well. Personalized health recommendation, and this is so freaking important. As a matter of fact, it's just so hard. I mean, I cannot in a 20-minute freaking clinical interview get to your baseline attitudes towards physical hygiene, diet preferences, religious preferences that impact how you actually interact with the other world in terms of social engagement, etc. These things can be extremely important, and if AI can be built around it, it can really parse through the exact situation you are having and therefore provide recommendations for your health. And this is honestly one of the most important things that everyone should benefit. Interpreting physician notes, that I just said right over here, that how physician notes, this is something called open note draw. So whenever I write a note, technically I'm not writing it for, honestly, it's really odd, but in US half the time I'm writing it for the billers, right? It sucks. The system over here is stupid. Anyways, but that note that can be given to a patient, and they can actually see what I wrote, and that is so important because they can understand that what I was evaluating, because they can point out, hey dude, you did not ask me this question, but this was important and you should actually do that. So the way they can actually access my notes, able to summarize it at an 8th or 6th grade level, it is so crucial in managing their own disease. These disease descriptions are very important. And of course, these analysis of laboratory results, making sure that patients understand what they mean. All of these are so many beautiful, so many important examples of improving your healthcare. However, how do we do this? How do we apply this in your work? There's so much areas of complete bullshit, right? You know that and I know that. I mean, there are freaking scammers after scammers. So we need a system in which all this innovation, all these applications come to you from an authentic way that is tested and validated. What is basically our current mechanism for doing that? So differ from already regulated artificial intelligence, clearly, because we do have artificial intelligence. As a matter of fact, if you look at FDA approval process, you're going to see that we have about 550 approved artificial intelligence models. Most of them do with radiology. None of them do practically, at least to my knowledge. If I'm mistaken, please put it down in the comments that there are actually now LLMs, but at least I don't know. I love FDA. And let me tell you my bias. I come from Pakistan originally, and FDA provides a service that is unmatched to the whole freaking world. They have done a tremendous amount of work in the last century to make medications safe, to make food safe. Everyone has problems. There are definitely issues. But honestly, as a whole, if you were to ask me, they have done a massive positive impact. However, when it comes to software as medical device, that's the term they're using. That's not what I've developed. That's the term they have developed. They did not have a process. They had a process, beautiful process for medications. They have a beautiful process for medical devices, knees, catheters, stents, etc. How do you regulate software? So that was completely new territory. So rather than creating a completely new system for it from a ground up, what FDA did was they did a shortcut. They took this medical device regulatory pathway and then converted it into software as a medical device. That basically is a stupid shortcut, apparently, but at the end of the day, that actually creates a lot of problems because they were not able to build from a ground up a whole process, how medical devices should be regulated. This becomes a massive problem. Now, this is so much more apparent in large language models because they have significantly large, massive data sets, so we don't know where the data is coming, then uses billions of parameters, so I don't know what the hell happened. And then more importantly, there are really no ways there were interpretability, fairness, and unintended consequences are tested. Now, we talked about Claude AI and OpenAI and red teaming and etc., and how they are trying to make the large language models fair, useful, and harmlessness. However, this is so much more important. It goes way beyond red teaming. We need clinical trials at the end of the day. And one of the things that they actually talked about is tokenization as a crucial step. If you are doing a large language model, what happens is that you basically this is your sentence. That sentence turns into these chunks. And even sometimes it's not even one chunk. The red is actually 3, ER is 7, is 2. So therefore, even sometimes the word itself turns into different chunks. And then even these different chunks then gets assigned a token and an index. That token and index then goes into an embedding matrix, and that embedding matrix goes into a neural network. Well, what happens is that we need to teach computer language, but computer knows math. So what we need to do is we need to convert language into math, and therefore literally the language becomes a vectorized database through tokenization. And that tokenization is basically what's being discussed. The problem is that we don't know if this tokenization is going to be entire sentences or paragraphs, because that seriously does impact how we're going to generate summaries, etc. And there is no standardized way to at least test it. So we should look into a very good method of baseline foundation, how that language is turned into math. And that is so important. And we need a way to go from even sub-level of word to actually sentences and paragraphs, because when the prediction comes in next, that's very important. Now, people will argue, the computer science experts and AI experts in the comments, that, hey, we are increasing the context length. The context length is not what we're talking about. We really need to increase the back-end tokenization to actually create more context, because it is so more important in terms of healthcare as far as large language models are concerned. Again, this is a technical issue, not I'm going to be honest with you, at the end of the day, computer science experts know more than I do, and I will be happy if somebody put in the comments as well. The hardware requirements are expensive. It is so freaking expensive right now to do generative AI. We need flops, teraflops of seconds, and we need GPUs. And this is becoming a big issue. As you know, we have done one of those videos in which NVIDIA stock has gone berserk because of this. There's broad acceptability. That's so important. Okay, here's it is. Large language models are mainly developed through foundation models. ChatGPT, GPT-4, Cloud AI, Bard, etc. However, this is not the way we can do it in medicine. In medicine, we need a neurology LLM, a psychiatry LLM, orthopedic LLM. We need specifically for discharge summaries, for clinical summaries, etc. And we have talked about in my previous how artificial intelligence as a service will develop. There will be many, all of these smaller AIs that are going to become complex and then become one big AI. And that's how it's going to work. As a matter of fact, honestly, GPT-4 is a collection of 8 different separate models. And that's exactly, I think, what we're going to do if you're going to think about a large artificial intelligence model in medicine is concerned. But this will, I completely agree with Eric Topol that this is very ill-suited for this. Real-time adoption. Now, this is the most problematic of all. Consistent improvement is what we sell artificial intelligence. Oh, computers are going to get better 10 years and you are going to be stuck here, and therefore your job is no longer going to be available. The promise we were sold on was continuous improvement. But how do I do that, legally speaking? I mean, the model is going to frequently change. If it's going to change, do I do clinical trials consistently? That's not a way that we can do this. We cannot have a trial that's constantly running on all pathologies. So we really need a way that responsible usage is done, adherence with ethical guidelines, and there is definitely continuous monitoring and evaluation in terms of real-time adoption, because that's where the key element is in terms of this. We really do need to know what the societal impact will be. Now, as far as this is concerned, like what would be the social impact, what would be the economic implications, right? This is huge. Healthcare represents 10% of the GDP for US. 10%. Are you kidding me? It's one industry. That's a huge chunk of the industry that we are looking into. If things are changing so rapidly in this, we need to make sure that we are retraining people, because these are very highly skilled people. And if you lose them, then and you need to get them again, that's going to be a bigger problem. So these things need to be at a government level, at a policy level, need to be planned. So pre-LLM oversight. So this is something that FDA came up recently. Before I get into this, let's go talk about this framework. Look, the regulating is software as a medical device. Remember I told you, medical device, and not have enough people to actually create a ground up model for software. So turn this regular medical device into software as a medical device. But apparently that's one of the things that is a big problem that come in. The issue with this, and this is basically released in 2011 when they actually talked about it. And of course, software has been embedded, right? We have pacemakers forever. They have software in there. So FDA knows how to do it, but there's a difference between SIMD, software inside a medical device, and software as a medical device. Those are two different things. Again, talk for another day. But again, one of the things that they have looked at is basically FDA has been adopting their regulatory framework, and today they're talking about life cycle, TPLC approach. So you are looking at somehow the good training models, and then how do you actually create a model? So this whole process, TPLC approach, is over here. Real world performance testing is extremely important. Culture, because you see, it's not about the freaking software. You need to have a whole company evaluated. Are these people not insane? Are they working on ethical fashion? Are they making sure that cybersecurity guidelines are followed? Are they actually looking at if there's a software change, are they documenting it properly, that software change input and outputs are completely correct? Are they looking at all the available possible hazards, right? I mean, that's the term in compliance we use. Like, what would your possible hazards, risks associated with these softwares? Those are the things. Pre-market assessment is done, and then of course algorithm. Again, anyone who's going through an FDA approval, which we are going through as far as AI and medical device, is just a knowing amount of work, but honestly, so important. Now, how does FDA approach this, right? FDA approaches this in terms of risks. So is this a class 1 device? Class 1 device is basically if it's a low risk device, you just have to do general controls, right? Good manufacturing process if this was a device. If this is software, then you have a good life cycle approach. Okay, you actually have documentation that you are actually following these particular standard operating procedures for inputs, designs, etc. However, the minute you go from class 1 to class 2, then you're coming into moderate risk. And then the moderate risk devices are basically in those that the failure can cause significant harm. Not significant harm, but definitely harm, but there's a level in which you are actually doing that. Class 3 device is basically what is considered high risk. And that is substantially important. So that's what I'm saying. SIMD inside a pacemaker, I mean, that's hacked or anything, that's a big issue. And therefore, those are class 3 devices. And therefore, the regulatory requirements go higher as their risk profile of the devices go higher. This is where they are talking about. This is the crux of the matter. To date, no LLM has pre-trained with the corpus of medical data or millions of medical records, websites, and conversation. No LLM. Complete medical corpus of data. You can have just the PubMed, you can all have only the labs, you can have only the patient records and bedside conversation. To combine them all, to create the holy grail of biomedical large language model. No, that would be amazing. Does not exist. This is so freaking important. First of all, I think I got excited about all of this is because that it has power to save lives and limbs. It's that simple. And areas that, unfortunately I have access to, even Ireland too, right? I mean, my friends are working, they don't have access to softwares that I use in USA, but of course, especially Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and all those countries, they have to make sure that this does not worsen the health inequity. But just to be fair, a lot of large companies, Microsoft, AWS, Google, have health equity initiatives, and they have been funding some startups for that. But we're going to talk about MedPalm LLM. This is done by Google. They actually do what we call multimodal, artificial intelligence, in which they're going to be able to do all of it, right? They're going to do pathology, medical knowledge, radiology, and medical questions, etc. And they're coming up with the holy grail, which is the multimodal large language model for healthcare. And this is what I wrote about it. Right? This is, again, make sure you follow me on LinkedIn. It's just fantastic. It's just fascinating work. It is groundbreaking work. As a matter of fact, Google, I think, is probably going to be the biggest contribution of Google now eventually will be in healthcare because of this. But what's going to happen? It's going to exacerbate health inequalities. Because I know that from firsthand. So at least I'm working honestly and tirelessly to make sure that we are not seeing these inequalities go worse. Now, for them, his final recommendation is what? A new regulatory category might be needed. That's what I've been saying. You need a freaking new category. You cannot take this stupid medical device and turn it into a software as a medical device. You need a brand new category, and especially add the importance of generative AI. Because now it's not just, algorithm that is chasing a interest rate with hemorrhage. You're actually going to invent new data, and that is going to be even more problematic, and there will be a new way to test those things. And again, this would be nice. He goes into how the depth and details of prompts. Again, if you guys really want to do a prompt engineering thing, especially for medicine, let me know. I've been doing a lot of experiments. Some of them are proper experiments with the team and for feedback and stuff. Others is basically what I like to research and learn on my own. Long story short, we need a new system to regulate, and this software as medical device will not be enough to do large language models. I think we need new auditing procedures as well, because how are you going to audit them, right? And that's another thing, right? I mean, you said today the model works, but we have seen that ChatGPT is getting worse according to some. I don't know. Don't quote me on it. But there have been studies now that said that ChatGPT is getting worse. How do you know if this is not going to get worse? So we need not only constant, awareness, but also constant change in terms of next, making sure that we are monitoring and editing and auditing these large language models. As much as I hate that healthcare is always the last in terms of innovation, it does have to be the safest, doesn't it? Thank you so much for your time.